just one less main game for the Yakuza franchise, but they really have too many anyway. Following up on the events of last week, Joe had become the liaison between the Boonboomger and the ISA. And yet for him and his weird fashion sense, he actually wanted to join the Boonboomger because, in his own words, he wanted to take down the bad guys like a certain superhero he admired. I mean, I'll take him over yet another Sudoku Squad show. Unless it's an anime. God, why did they have to make Harley look so cute? Anyway, Taya turned him down, as apparently he wasn't worthy for reasons we'd learn later in the episode, though I'd like to think it's also partially because he's more of a Superman fan, and still holding out for a good modern movie, like all of us. Meanwhile, the Hashian were a little disappointed that they weren't being mentioned in the news alongside the Boonboomger, which, hey, that's modern journalism in a nutshell, only ever telling half the story. As a result, or at least according to her, Itasha missed her target on the dartboard, so she just turned it into a monster. Joe ran into it while he himself was sulking. It was essentially gathering the suffering of its victims by making them play a game of darts, in which if they missed the bullseye, they'd have to suffer some truly awful punishments, like being hit by those plunger mallets, or being forced to walk on those foot massage things.
Okay.
Yeah, worth mentioning that this episode was written by a brand new secondary writer for this franchise, so the comedy is a little off. Specifically, it was written by Hiroshi Yamaguchi, who's a little bit more of an under-the-radar creative. In terms of Toei, he's written for a few episodes of Dragon Ball Super and both of the modern Digimon series, but I guess more appropriately for this show, he has mostly worked on mech anime, including Gao Gaigar, where he wrote a lot of episodes, including that amazing final episode, and alongside that, he was the main writer of its sister series, Better Man. Though, most notably for me personally, he wrote for Gurren Lagann, including a certain episode near the end of the series that still hits me so hard. So with that kind of pedigree, I can give him a little leeway to get used to writing for this franchise, plus by the end of this very episode, he'll be able to start slipping in some of his better stuff. And in fact, it started to unfold, as even after Officer Joel called in for some backup, he stepped in as soon as he heard another one of the monster's victims cry for help. Again, I don't think he was saving her from that much, but he was showing that he was willing to take the initiative. And he did come up with a good way of dealing with this guy. Damn! Okay, so you're kind of going from a 0 to 100 in terms of your violence, and I kind of appreciate that. Like seriously, I know it's just a costume, and it clearly didn't pierce anything, but still, just the thought of it is legit painful. And this is even followed up by a rather brutal beatdown, with Joe still not even being a Boonboomger, resulting with some blood coming out of his mouth. That's how you sell the idea that this guy is putting his life on the line to save others. Anyway, the Boonboomger arrived, and of course the monster had them play some darts too. Though his punishments, while still goofy, were a little more lethal on them. So, was the reason they made that Batman reference earlier was because this guy has basically become the Joker? Hell, he even took directly from his playbook when Taya managed to strike a bullseye.
We're going to waste you anyway.
But yeah, the heroes were in legit danger, and Joe could do nothing. And yet, watching them try to get back up and fight again made him realize what he was missing as a hero. In fact, I think we should use a certain Ryuki clip again. Simply becoming a hero because you want to emulate others should never be the main goal. Real heroes fight based on their convictions, which can range from many different perspectives. For Sentai, and many Toei shows really, it's often just the simple idea that it's just right to protect others if you have the powers to do so. And granted, while he was well out of his element here, Joe was able to find ways to help others in spite of his limitations as just a normal human. Thus, he was able to stand bravely again and protect the heroes who were in trouble.
人々を守ること
Again, a writer for Gao Gaigar and Gren Lagann, just saying. Anyway, while Joe proved to be a true hero in his own right, preventing any further internal bleeding was probably a good idea, so Gemba arrived with his new weapon and henshin device in accordance to Taiya's request. And with his brand new toy in hand, Joe made one hell of a Sentai debut when you consider everything else he's already done. The resulting fight with the now 4-member team was also great, as while this was still very much Boon Black's debut, everyone else was able to show off their unique fighting skills and kind of make up for their earlier defeats. That said, Joe still had easily the best moments, including being able to show off how his axe weapon could also turn into a sword that could deflect projectiles in a really nicely shot sequence. In fact, I really love some of these overhead shots that I'm assuming they got with some drones or something, because these are some pretty high and very impressive looking angles. As a result, the giant monster fight was just the cherry on top of an already great sundae. But yeah, with a new member, they also debuted a couple of new cars. Interestingly, Mira and Ishiro co-piloted a paddy wagon, while Joe got a Mirage car. Using it plus some spike strips because cops, they managed to derail Yar car and then debuted a new form for their robot that feels like a Deca Ranger homage, complete with similar sound effects, but with even more gun kata, which is a definite plus. See, even he gets it. And since 75% of this team weren't actual law enforcement, they just skipped any due process and blew the monster away. With that, the episode ended with Joe telling his boss that he had kind of overstepped his bounds, but Chiabe was a little too excited over Curry to really pay attention. This was a great debut for the Cop Sentai, who's not actually part of the other 2 Cop Sentai teams. I mean, Joe was already a likable enough character, but after this episode, I would say he's instantly become my favorite of the show. Part of it was, of course, the spectacle, but I think it was mostly thanks to his actor putting his all into this role. Granted, I was a little off-put by some of the tonal inconsistencies, but that can be fixed up as this writer gets more used to this franchise. Call me old-fashioned, but I just love it when a lead character just goes all in spite of being battered and bruised, just to really show off their determination and resolve. It's something you see a lot in mecha anime, especially with super robots, and of course I like to see it in my tokusatsu too. Of course, to pull it off, you not only need a good script, but also a strong performance from the actor. In this case, Ryu Saito just acted his heart out here with some great intensity. His facial expressions were just fantastic, all the while he was blowing out his lungs like crazy. Hard to believe he's just 20, and yet he could deliver this kind of a performance. It effectively got across the resolve he managed to build up over the course of the episode that made him realize what it really takes to be a hero like a Super Sentai. And honestly, it made his actual Sentai debut feel like almost an afterthought. Not that it wasn't awesome, as it easily had some of the best camera work of this show so far, and some excellent explosions. Add on top of that, a giant robot fight with gun kata, and yeah, this show is really just a live-action super robot anime. All of that said, yeah, it does still feel like the writer is adjusting to the show. I mean, I haven't minded the faster pace of the show, but totally, it did feel a little too goofy at times, with the monster's initial punishments, that were then followed up with Joe bleeding out of his mouth. Still, it's not too big a deal, as overall, Joe was just awesome, and really made this episode with some amazing acting, and the kind of intensity that reminds me of why I like super robot anime so much, and am looking forward to seeing some more bravery added into the show. Tomorrow, my family and I are going to be going off on a 2-week vacation, so no weekly reviews like this for a little while. But we've already uploaded and scheduled a couple of shorter videos to take up those time slots over those 2 weeks. And after we get back, we'll play a little catch up after a review of the first 2 episodes of Blue Archive. Yep, we're gonna start covering an adaptation of a mobile game that I know next to nothing about, so I can go in as a potential new fan to this magical Gun Girl franchise, with some admittedly great designs. So, look forward to it. Until then though, for now my friends, and... No. I think Kiryu's actually upset that they removed the darts. Hey, look dude, you at least still have Virtual Fighter.